The body maintains a balance of water intake and output by a series of negative feedback loops involving the endocrine system and autonomic nervous system. Your goals for learning are to examine dehydration and hypovolemia, to examine the role the kidneys play in regulating water homeostasis, to understand how neural and endocrine mechanisms work to maintain water homeostasis via negative feedback mechanisms, to examine the role thirst plays in regulating water homeostasis. Here's what you need to know: the function of the urinary system, the function of ADH, aldosterone, and the sympathetic nervous system. To see definitions of terms, click the bold red words. The average adult body contains about 40 liters of water. This amount, called total body water, remains fairly constant under normal circumstances. On this page, the gain and loss of fluid in the human body will be represented by the gain and loss of fluid in the tank below. Every day, we take in about 2,300 milliliters of water in the form of food and beverages. Approximately 200 milliliters of body water is generated through cell metabolism for an approximate 2,500 milliliters of total intake. At the same time, we lose water, mostly through the kidneys, but also through the lungs, skin, and gastrointestinal tract. We lose approximately 1,500 milliliters per day from the kidneys in the form of urine. We also lose about 600 milliliters of water per day through the skin and 300 milliliters from the lungs in the form of water vapor in exhaled air. These two forms of water loss are called insensible loss because we are unaware of the process. We can lose much more than this insensible loss under conditions of extreme physical exertion. Under such conditions, we can lose up to 5,000 milliliters per day through sweating. Under normal circumstances, we also lose 100 milliliters of water per day through the GI tract. As you can see, maintaining water homeostasis is a balancing act. The amount of water taken in must equal the amount of water lost. Disturbances of water homeostasis fall into two general categories: gain or loss of extracellular fluid volume and gain or loss of solute. In many instances, disturbances of water homeostasis involve imbalances of both volume and solute. We will discuss 4 specific examples of disturbances in water homeostasis: hypervolemia, overhydration, hypovolemia, and dehydration. Hypervolemia occurs when too much water and solute are taken in at the same time. Although extracellular fluid volume increases, plasma osmolarity may remain normal. Overhydration occurs when too much water is taken in without solute. Volume increases, but because solute is not present, plasma osmolarity decreases. Hypovolemia occurs when water and solutes are lost at the same time. This condition primarily involves a loss of plasma volume. Plasma osmolarity usually remains normal even though volume is low. When water, but not solute, is lost, dehydration occurs. Dehydration involves a loss of volume, but because solutes are not lost in the same proportion, plasma osmolarity increases. To repeat any animation, click the appropriate quadrant on the chart. Here are 4 examples of conditions that disturb water homeostasis. Drag each one into its correct location in the table. Correct. Although sweating causes the loss of some solute through the skin, much more water is lost, and the person becomes dehydrated. Very good. Drinking too much water would dilute the plasma and the osmolarity would decrease, resulting in overhydration. Good. Too much IV fluids can increase plasma volume dramatically, but with an isotonic solution, the plasma osmolarity would remain normal and result in... That's right. Blood loss involves a loss of water and solutes, resulting in hypovolemia. The major way that we regulate water loss from the body is through the kidneys. Before we continue, let's quickly review how the nephron of the kidney works. The kidneys are composed of millions of microscopic structures called nephrons, where urine is formed. Blood vessels wrap around the nephron, allowing exchanges between the plasma and the filtrate, or forming urine. Let's review the 3 steps involved in urine formation. What is the first step in urine formation? Yes. During glomerular filtration, small solutes and water will move from the plasma in the glomerular capillaries into the glomerular capsule, beginning the process of urine formation. Reabsorption is the second step in urine formation. Drag the potassium ion in the direction it would move if it was reabsorbed into the plasma. Secretion is the third step in urine formation. Drag the potassium ion in the direction it would move if it was secreted. Our bodies have mechanisms that regulate fluid levels within a narrow range. Let's explore how the body's fluids remain within certain physiological limits, an important aspect of homeostasis. 4 primary mechanisms regulate fluid homeostasis: antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, the thirst mechanism, aldosterone, and the sympathetic nervous system. When the runner loses water by sweating, his plasma becomes more concentrated in solutes. Drag the needle on the homeostasis meter to the dehydration point to see what happens. Osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus detect the increased osmolarity or concentration of solutes in the interstitial fluid. In response to this increased concentration, antidiuretic hormone is released into the plasma at the posterior pituitary. The target tissues for ADH are the late distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct cells in the kidney. Click the kidney to see how ADH works there. The cells of the DCT and collecting duct become permeable to water only in the presence of ADH. ADH promotes the addition of water channels into the cells of the late distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct, allowing water to move from the filtrate to the plasma by way of osmosis. ADH therefore increases the reabsorption of water. What effect would antidiuretic hormone have on the concentration of the plasma? Remember, ADH causes more water to be taken up into the plasma. Try again. Because more water is reabsorbed, the plasma becomes more dilute. The greater amount of water in the plasma reduces the plasma concentration of solutes and increases the volume of the plasma somewhat. What effect does antidiuretic hormone have on the volume and osmolarity of urine produced? Because more water is reabsorbed, there is less urine, and that urine has an increased osmolarity. All of the effects of antidiuretic hormone help to prevent further fluid loss. ADH will probably still be secreted until the runner drinks enough fluid to dilute the plasma. After drinking fluids, the plasma osmolarity decreases to normal, returning the secretion of antidiuretic hormone to baseline levels, completing the negative feedback loop. The thirst mechanism is the primary regulator of water intake and involves hormonal and neural input as well as voluntary behaviors. To find out why dehydration leads to thirst, click the runner. There are three major reasons why dehydration leads to thirst. When saliva production decreases, the mouth and throat become dry. Impulses go from the dry mouth and throat to the thirst center in the hypothalamus, stimulating that area. When you are dehydrated, plasma osmotic pressure increases, stimulating osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus, and the thirst center in the hypothalamus is now further activated. Decreased blood volume causes a decrease in blood pressure that stimulates the release of renin from the kidney. This causes the production of angiotensin II, which stimulates the thirst center in the hypothalamus. Stimulation of the thirst center in the hypothalamus gives you the desire to drink. Drag 1 glass of water to the figure's mouth.
More water.
Drag another glass of water to his mouth.
More water.
Drag another glass of water to his mouth. This fluid ingestion relieves the dryness in the mouth and throat. Fluid ingestion also stimulates stretch receptors in the stomach and intestine to send inhibitory signals to the thirst center. When normal fluid volume is restored, dehydration is relieved. Renin secretion from the kidney and angiotensin II now decreases to baseline levels. When a person donates large amounts of blood, they lose solutes as well as water. When solutes and water are lost at the same time, blood volume decreases, threatening hypovolemia. When blood volume is lost, what happens to the blood pressure? Remember, if blood volume decreases, blood pressure also decreases. When a person experiences blood loss, blood pressure decreases. Because a hypovolemic person experiences a decrease in blood pressure, juxtaglomerular cells in the arterioles of the kidney release renin. As renin travels through the bloodstream, it binds to an inactive plasma protein, angiotensinogen, activating it into angiotensin I. As angiotensin I passes through the lung and other capillaries, an enzyme called angiotensin converting enzyme, or ACE, converts angiotensin I to angiotensin II. Angiotensin II continues through the bloodstream until it reaches the adrenal gland. Here it stimulates the cells of the adrenal cortex to release the hormone aldosterone. Angiotensin II also has a vasoconstriction effect that helps to increase the blood pressure. Aldosterone can also be released when potassium concentrations in the plasma are high. In the absence of aldosterone, the cells in the late distal convoluted tubule and collecting ducts allow few sodium and potassium ions to pass because there are few sodium and potassium channels in the cell membrane facing the kidney tubule. There are also few sodium-potassium ATPase pumps on the basal side of these cells. Aldosterone exerts its effect by inserting additional channels in the late distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct of the kidney. This allows more sodium to move from the filtrate into the plasma and potassium to move from the plasma into the filtrate. Drag the sodium in the direction it will move if aldosterone is present. In the presence of aldosterone, sodium moves from the filtrate to the plasma. Drag the potassium in the direction it will move if aldosterone is present. In the presence of aldosterone, potassium moves from the plasma to the filtrate. If antidiuretic hormone is also present, water will follow the sodium into the plasma by osmosis. This movement of water and sodium into the blood causes the blood pressure to increase, completing the negative feedback loop. The net result of aldosterone's action is the reabsorption of sodium and the secretion of potassium. If ADH is also present, water is reabsorbed into the plasma at the kidney, preventing further water loss from the body. As a result, plasma volume and blood pressure are stabilized until water is consumed. A decrease in blood volume and therefore blood pressure will stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. Click the blood pressure gauge to begin the process. When blood pressure is low, baroreceptors in the heart, aortic arch, and carotid arteries send sensory information to the medulla. The information sent from the baroreceptors to the medulla will cause an increase in the sympathetic impulses to the kidney. Click the kidney to show what happens next. Release of neurotransmitters from the sympathetic nerves in the kidney stimulates smooth muscle cells in the afferent arteriole to constrict. This process causes a decrease in blood flow into the glomerulus and a drop in glomerular filtration rate and results in less urine formation. Less water leaves the body. Sympathetic stimulation also causes the release of renin, which, by stimulating aldosterone secretion, will increase the reabsorption of sodium. As a result, blood volume will stop decreasing and blood pressure may stabilize. However, because the blood pressure and blood volume have not yet returned to normal, the baroreceptors will continue to be stimulated to prevent further loss of blood volume. In order to bring this person back into homeostasis, we need to increase the blood volume by drinking fluids. In fact, after an individual has given blood, they are encouraged to drink juice to increase their plasma level. Here's a summary of what we've covered. To maintain homeostasis, water intake must equal water output. There are 4 categories of water and solute imbalances. We use the term overhydration to describe an excess of water only. Hypervolemia involves an excess of both water and solute. Dehydration is the loss of water from the body without significant loss of solute. Hypovolemia is a loss of both water and solute. Water balance is maintained within a narrow range by negative feedback loops involving the hormones ADH and aldosterone, as well as the thirst mechanism and the sympathetic nervous system. To test your knowledge, click the quiz button to go to the self-quiz.